The New York Times has a capital idea, and the NFL wants to lift every voice and sing. I'm Scott Ott, and this episode of Bill Whittle Now is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Bill, we were just talking before we started recording about one of these stories, and I tried to keep my poker face because we like to ambush you in this show with provocative questions. But I want to give you a little bit about the New York Times first, and then we can go in depth into the story that I think has you more exercise. The New York Times has decided that it will officially capitalize the word black now when it refers to black people. This is the first time that they've made such a major change since W.E.B. Du Bois, back in the early part of the last century, was hammering on the Times and insisting that they should capitalize Negro. The Times resisted that, but eventually gave in. Now, of course, Negro is considered to be a disparaging term as language changes over time. But the Times has said that it will enter into its official style book, the Capitalization of black when referring to an individual person. Now, Bill, I got to be honest, I've been doing this for a long time. I just think it's to make a distinction when you're talking about persons. I capitalize anytime we use white or black or anything like that, just as kind of out of courtesy to make sure people don't think I'm talking about a box of crayons. Is this a big breakthrough for the New York Times?
I was utterly unaware of it. I don't capitalize adjectives. I capitalize proper nouns. That's how the English language works.
Well, that's how it works now.
Yeah, that's how it works now. And that's how it's worked for hundreds of years. This idea that all of history is going to be erased in 2020 is going to come to a boil.
Well, Bill, I don't think it's actually true that capitalization has always followed the current rules. In fact, even during the days of our founding fathers, if you read our founding documents, you'll see that capitalization does not follow the current style book. What's wrong with acknowledging a particular group of people by capitalizing the adjective that modifies who they are?
Will white be capitalized?
You know, it didn't say that in the story.
I'm funny because I wonder why. I wonder why it didn't say that in the story. You would think that if they were doing this out of a sign of respect for a person as an identifier of the person, as if that's relevant, but as an identifier of the person, if you're going to respect black people by capitalizing black, then obviously you would capitalize white as well. And I'm surprised that they didn't include that in their announcement.
I'll have to wait till I get my new copy of the New York Times style book to confirm that.
Yeah. But I suspect, if I had to guess, Scott, I would say it's probably not going to be.
Okay, let's go on to the second topic, because as I said at the top, you mentioned this before we even got rolling today. There is a song called Lift Every Voice and Sing that is based on a poem by a civil rights activist. And the song is sometimes referred to as the Black National Anthem. The National Football League said they're going to have that song at the beginning of week 1 of their new season. Someone is going to perform that song. Donte Stallworth, who was a football player for 10 years in the NFL, basically said when he heard the news, he said, "Why?" And he goes on in a column in the New York Times to talk about how it seems like cheap symbolism to him unless it's backed up by some serious things that we'll get into in a minute. Bill, what did you think when you first heard that the so-called Black National Anthem would be sung, I'm assuming in addition to the regular national anthem, at the top of week 1 of the NFL?
It's the same kind of condescending, divisive, white elitist snobbery that has just been unleashed in all of its virulence during 2020. This is white liberals bending over backwards to make a point, and I'm very, very pleased to hear that football players say why, because here's where this world ends up. This is not the conservative world. We believe in individualism. We judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. You ought to write that down. That's got a little ring to it. Maybe we'll switch it around a little bit. But the world that the progressives are taking us into with the Black National Anthem is the world where we will soon see at the Academy Awards the best black actor and best black actress. And then the Nobel Prize will be given to the best black chemist of the year, the best discovery in chemistry by a black scientist. And if you can't see how degrading that is, and how condescending it is, and how evil it is, then you probably got a problem. I do, however, think that if we really do want to show the NFL what we think about this, if there's 100,000 people in a stadium and they play the Black National Anthem as if it's an alternative national anthem, I would, and I imagine a lot of other people, I think we ought to take a knee on that one.
Well, Bill, I'm not sure it's a new phenomenon. I actually looked up the song because I wanted to hear it. I did not recall having heard it before. And this song, Lift Every Voice and Sing, goes back quite a few decades. In fact, there's an awesome version of it done by Ray Charles on the Dick Cavett Show. So that gives you an idea of how long ago that was.
Wow.
And there were quite a few.
If it's been on the Dick Cavett Show, then it is absolutely at the forefront of 2020
what I'm saying is you're making it sound like it's some new thing where suddenly African Americans or white liberals are pushing for this.
I'm saying it's obscure. I don't care if it's God Bless America. I really don't care if it's God Bless America. I don't care if it's I don't care if it's 50 Ways That Bill is Awesome. It doesn't matter to me. There is no separate national anthem for black people in this country because they are not different citizens. They are not their own nation. They belong to the United States, and virtually all of them know that, including the football players who should be outraged at this obscenity, at this classification of black Americans as something other than Americans in order to make these white, liberal, narcissistic, evil, degenerate, elitist snobs in the New York Times building feel better about themselves as they scramble to break their leases in Manhattan and move out into the countryside with the low-sloping forehead, knuckle-dragging gun owners, just so perhaps they have a chance for their children to reach, maturity.
The song itself, and I've listened to a couple of versions of it, I've read the lyrics, seems to be more a song about the black experience in America rather than something that's a separate idea. In fact, the song is not called the Black National Anthem. That's just a term that people use to refer to it. And the song is actually filled with a kind of combination of the struggle we've been through as well as the hope that now lies before us. And frankly, thanks to God for that. I don't think reading the lyrics you'd find anything objectionable about it. Would you have a problem if it were just introduced at the beginning of the football game and they said, ladies and gentlemen, everybody, please stand if you want to hear Lift Every Voice and Sing?
Yes, I would have a problem with that.
Just because it would be, do you think it would be in lieu of our national anthem, or if it were side by side with the national anthem?
Because it is dissecting the audience, both in television and in the stadium, and then removing a segment of it and putting it in a Petri dish. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. I mean, it's utterly, absolutely disgraceful. And it is awfully ripe for mockery, too, because if that's the case, we can start sitting down, well, mostly you, because you're such a great comedy writer. I'd like to hear what the Irish national anthem is, or the Scottish national anthem. I'd like to hear what the Welsh national anthem is. And the British national anthem, which is... You're telling
me yakety sax is the British national anthem?
Yes, of course it is, obviously. Everybody who's ever watched television knows that. So why not? Look, if you want a better example of the left's desire to destroy America by destroying the only real concept that America was founded on, e pluribus unum, out of many one, new people in a new country, everyone equal, everyone the same. If you want evidence of destroying that, you will not have to look much farther than efforts like this in order to see how unbearably evil this is.
So here's why Donte Stallworth, the former NFL player for about a decade, why he objected to it. He points out that about 2/3 of players in the NFL are black, but out of 32 teams, only 3 of them have black head coaches, only 2 of them have black general managers, and of 20 head coaching vacancies that have come up over the last 3 years, only 2 black head coaches were hired for those vacancies. He basically says, enough with your symbolism. How about setting up a pipeline to make sure that you're not marginalizing black assistant coaches and play callers and people who are coming up through the ranks, and opening the doors to a league that is super majority black to some leadership that's also black.
That's one possible explanation and one possible solution. Another possible solution might be you promote the coaches that win football games. That's another way to look at this phenomenon of who you hire for a head coach. You promote the people to head coach who've done the best job as assistant coaches. And if 2/3 of the players in the NFL are black, that means there's not going to be any shortage of former players in assistant coaching roles. So if we're going to make a mandated quota for how many black coaches there are, then it is once again, it's going to be like, congratulations, you've just won the Super Bowl. Here's your trophy for best black coach in America. What a tremendous thrill it must be for you. We will now play Raise All Voices in Song. This is the world that they want. It's the progressives want, the progressive politicians and the progressive movement wants.
Bill, he's not calling for a quota, honestly, but he could make the argument, although he didn't, but I'll say it. He could make the argument that, in effect, there is a quota right now, and the quota is 90% white for head coaching.
The quota is got to do with who wins football games. I've seen how coaches get turned around in the NFL and in college. And the one thing that seems pretty clear to me, and has been pretty clear to me my entire adult life, which is 30, 40, 50 years now, has been that the people who win football games get promoted and the people that lose football games get fired. And if you're trying to tell me that in 2020, there are talented black coaches who are kicking butt and not getting promoted because of racism, in other words, we're going to lose. Well, we'll lose 3 out of 4 games, but at least we don't have to hire a head black coach who could win 8 out of 10. If you actually think that's how the world works, you've got another thing coming. It is absolutely ridiculous thing to say. And everybody knows it. So why don't you stop crying about it and start doing something about it?
I'm not sure everybody knows it, Bill, and I would suggest that only one, if you look at Donte Stallworth and Bill Whittle, only one of them has worn a set of shoulder pads for 10 years in the NFL. Who do you think has a better insight into how things operate in the NFL?
Who do you think is more likely to become a head coach of an NFL team?
You. I mean, if you look at the numbers.
Oh, really? I'm not talking about numbers, Scott. I'm talking about individuals. Of the 2 of us, who do you think is most likely to become a head coach of a football team?
Well, you would think the guy with football experience, but do you really think that Donte Stallworth would put his reputation on the line and make up a problem that doesn't really exist?
So what Donte Stallworth is saying essentially is that if it came down to me and Donte Stallworth, I would be the next head coach of the LA Rams or whatever. And he wouldn't get the job on account of me being white and not knowing anything about football.
Well, I think he would suggest you'd also need a bunch of football knowledge too. But you'd have to, if you were 2 coaches, white and black, the record shows that the white guys are getting hired much more frequently than the black guys.
To say that is insane. To say that good winning black coaches are being passed over for poorer records and poorer performance from white coaches is insane. It's an insane thing to say. It is so far away from reality that there is no way for me to deal with it other than to say I cannot argue with insane people. If there's any bias at all, if there's any tailwind or headwind in this, you're trying to tell me that business owners are saying, wow, we have 2 coaches here. They're both exactly equal. Which one should we pick? One's white and one's black. I think it'd be better for the team, for publicity and for everything else if we go with the white guy. Who lives in this world, this make-believe world? Who lives in it? What pro football, pro basketball, pro baseball represents is the best of the best. And that's how you should be promoted in the NFL.
Well, a lot of those guys turn out to be losers, though, Bill.
Well, a lot of white guys turn out to be losers. A lot of black guys. Scott, If this guy is saying that we should have more black representation among head coaches in a league that has 2/3 of the players being black, in a country where white people outnumber black people, I don't know what the actual number is, 4, 5, 6 to 1, then I say that we ought to make some adjustments right away to the racism that's going on the field. We need more white players on the field. We absolutely need more white players. I look at certain football games, I don't see a white face on the field. I think we're just grossly misrepresented, underrepresented on the football field, and I want some changes from the NFL right now. I want to hear what they're going to do to make sure that more white players are on the field and that it looks more like America down there. That's what I want to know.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're grateful you took the time to watch this episode of Bill Whittle Now. We thank the members at BillWhittle.com who have made it possible. You can join their ranks by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking that big green Become a Member link. And I'll tell you honestly, just to sign off here, if you had heard that song in any other context, you probably would have thought it was lovely. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott.
If you heard the song, you probably don't live in 2020.
Have a good day, my friends.